Hey everyone, so I'm back in the greenhouse. Yesterday we had sowed some seeds for basil and chives, and I noticed when we did the chives last night that we had 3 remaining little containers, so I'll continue to finish that off in this tray. And also after watering, I realized that I had forgot to put some vermiculite down, so I put some vermiculite over the chives. So I pulled out my 6-pack trays from, these are from, I think I got these at M.I. Gardener or Johnny's, but anyway, they're part of the Bootstrap series. I had used them for growing status and a few others, so I thought I do my Canterbury Bells in those. And as I mentioned previously, in case you missed it, these are a biennial, so they may not flower this coming spring. They might not flower till the following, but in any case, it's a cool flower. So you can, in some zones, sow the seeds as early as late fall to produce flowers, or at least produce foliage the following spring. So in our zone, because it's, we're in colder zone in zone 5B in northern Illinois, I'm going to plant or sow the seeds and then maybe plant them early February or March, depending on how the growth is indoors under grow lights or in the greenhouse. I am going to notice whether or not there's enough sunlight here over the winter, and depending on whether we get the electrical installed to turn on the grow lights in here, there may not be enough sunlight, unfortunately. So I do have my grow lights in the kitchen. It's just a small four tray set of grow lights that you've seen. That's from Gardener's Supply. So I might have to bring some things in there if like these basil and chives and whatever I'm growing in the next couple months if we don't get enough sunlight. So for example, this week we have potentially 3 days of rain, which means overcast days. We didn't get a lot of sunlight today, probably a couple hours. So who knows if solar lights will come on, for example, or if there's enough sunlight to germinate seeds. So we'll see how it goes. It's a test, as I said in yesterday's video. So I just want to get these planted up really quickly, and then we'll, in the next part of the video, hopefully I'll be back out in the garden and I can work on winterizing, or working on, getting my roses ready for the winter. And by that, I mean pruning them back and spreading some compost around the base, which is what I did last year, and they all winterized beautifully. Every rose I planted last spring and summer came back beautifully this year, even the one that the rabbit ate. So let's just carry on. Did I mention that we have to go to a HOA annual meeting shortly? Well, this evening around, it's at 7. We went through quite a process getting our greenhouse approved. We live in a neighborhood where we live in a neighborhood that has an HOA, so we needed to get approval for our greenhouse. It was under the category of an accessory building. So I honestly thought it was going to be pretty easy, because our covenant, HOA covenant, basically reads quite simply that you need to have an accessory building that, there are no restrictions, by the way, to build a gazebo, but an accessory building needs to be similar to the exterior of your home. So that's why we have this beautiful stone foundation, which I sourced to match the exact stone as the front of our house. So, and obviously that was an extra expense, because you can build a greenhouse with a wood foundation, or just concrete and put siding, which the majority of our house is siding, but we went ahead and did the beautiful stone, which I'm really happy with. But in any case, they gave us a bit of a hard time, and in the end we won. We won approval, but so just long story short, I think it's really important to participate in at least the annual meetings of our HOA to make sure that we're voting in the right people, positive-minded people, like-minded people who care about furthering the beautification of our neighborhood, and just contribute somewhat to whatever we can. So that's why we're going to our HOA. We have a beautiful neighborhood here, and I believe in being involved because we do have HOA fees that are pretty significant. So we last couple of years have been going since we moved in 3 years ago, and at least go to the annual just so we know where the money is going and that we are active contributors. So 2 decisions being made. So anyway, that's what our evening looks like. Let's finish up getting the chives in there. Let me find that seed packet. Here's the chives, and start indoors 4 to 6 weeks before last frost, and direct sow 2 weeks before last frost. Takes 4 to 14 days to germinate and 80 days till maturity. So mid-January I should have some chives, so that's kind of exciting. Chives, as most of us know it, is usually a perennial. So it says here, plant somewhere spacious where they can overtake. Chives like terrain and are very handy to use fresh. Perennials hardy and grows well in pots, which is exactly how I've managed chives. So this plant grows 12 inches tall, 6 to 12 inch spacing. It's one of these things where I'm just going to spread a few seeds and then just put a layer of the starting mix on top. I don't remember if we showed you the size of the seeds yesterday. I think we did, but my stepdaughter's hands were pretty full of soil, so it was hard to tell, but there it is there. So let me know in the comments what seeds you guys are starting. Are you sowing any cool flowers? Are you doing any of those? Are you doing any cool flowers outdoors? Are you doing them indoors? Let me know. I'm really curious because seed starting was pretty new to me. I had done very minimal seed sowing previously, like I've done a lot of morning glories, and what else did I direct sow? Just a bunch of things that you direct sow outdoors. But this past spring in February, if you follow my channel, as you know, I did a whole bunch of, all of my vegetables, all my tomatoes, peppers, herbs, all my cut flowers were all started from seed, and I was really, really happy with the progress and how well it did, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to be that successful. It was, I kept saying it was my test year, but I was so happy with how it went. Even, something difficult like stock, I was able to do an entire bed of stock, and that was my earliest. Stock and pansies and snapdragons were my 3 earliest flowers that I sowed. And stock, the only reason why I'm not going to repeat it is because, number one, I had it hardening off over there in my potting bench, and it was on the bottom, and so the concrete slabs on top and the wood on top kind of stopped it from getting sunlight. So they kind of all went, were seeking the light, and we're getting all like bendy, and I could actually live with that because I wasn't growing them to sell. This past season, I was growing them just for my own personal bouquets for in the house, and the bouquets were beautiful, but they were basically a one and done. And I'm not that interested in doing a ton of succession planting of sowing seeds indoors as the season goes on. I like to just continue growing my seeds until they all get out into the garden, and then, and then you just continue to cut on them and let them grow out through the season. And as much as I thought I might succession plant snapdragons, I didn't need to, for example, succession plant snapdragons or my zinnias. I didn't succession plant those. I simply direct sowed some, and then I grew some indoors under grow lights with soil blocks. So in essence, because the direct sowing was a little bit later, they came up a little later. The flowers bloomed a little later than the ones that came out as seedlings from my grow lights, from under my grow lights. It was as though I did succession planting. So these are good. Now they're full, and I'm going to water them and then put some vermiculite. And I think I mentioned yesterday, after I water these and put them under the dome and they germinate, I will then start to water from underneath and through the trays. I'll water the trays, and that way we just get more consistent soaking all the way down. Because I think what happened with my basil the last couple months is I was only watering them from up top, and they were in the deep rooted pots, and so they just dried out too quickly. They just didn't get enough moisture down to the roots. So I think the best way to alleviate that is to water from underneath. And when you have small seeds, spraying water like this is the most effective, I find, because then you're not going to water with a heavy spray and then potentially have your seedlings float away. They're actually going to get rooted into the soil much better. This spray bottle isn't the best. If I can find myself a better one, I certainly will. If you guys have a recommendation for one. So I'm just putting a few of these. Spreading a nice layer of vermiculite like this. And what that does is it prevents too much moisture, like creating, when you water these, it avoids your plants or your pots getting any kind of mold, but at the same time it keeps the moisture in the pot, which is nice. So I'm going to add this to the tray of chives. I'm going to try to work really quickly. I didn't pre-moisten this time, just in the interest of time, and these are pretty small pots. So ideally you pre-moisten your starting mix or your potting soil. I know some people use potting mix, a good potting mix that's not too heavy, that's nice and lightweight, instead of starter mix. I think it was Burpees that Roxanne over in Soil and Margaritas, she lives in Indiana, not too far from me. She uses, I think it's a Burpee, so I need to look into that. She really likes a Burpee potting mix, and it's probably more affordable than starter mix. So I'm certainly going to look into that this winter. I'm just a home gardener and I'm just buying small bags. I have the equivalent of seven raised beds. 6 of them are 4x8 that I grow my cut flowers in, and the L-shaped one is almost like 1.5 raised beds because it's an L shape, and that is where I grow my herbs and some flowers like marigolds and nasturtiums, and I did do some dahlias, and that was more for a functional reason, and that was to detract the aphids and other bugs from my veggies and herbs, which worked really well. My crackerjack marigolds, my gosh, they're still out there in November. So once again, it's getting dark in here. I'm really going to have to get my electrical push to get my electrical put in here, because I don't think we're going to get solar lights working today, because it was a very, very gray day, and solar, as you know, relies on sunlight, and sometimes they'll come on like they did yesterday, but they don't come on for very long, because now the outdoor light has a sensor that it senses when it's dark, and it's already come on, as you can see behind me there. But the solar lights in the greenhouse haven't come on. So we're going to have to stop there and continue on again tomorrow. So it's day 2 of this video, and unfortunately it was raining again today, pretty much all day. I managed to get into the greenhouse and started sowing seeds for the Canterbury Bells. Fortunately, I forgot to put my mic on, and you'll see me, unless you can read my lips, I'm basically talking about how it was voting day today, and I wore my red, white, and blue, and decided that I needed to finish these Canterbury Bells, or get them into these 6-packs. And I talked about how it was quite a challenging day to even get Eddie out for a walk, and I didn't feel very accomplished today. I basically watched a bunch of YouTube videos, did some laundry, and finally I was going to sow these seeds before it got dark again. So I was talking about how you need to be really careful when you're buying seeds, because as much as most of us collect seeds and can sometimes get them to germinate after a year or two, I actually had trouble when I bought seeds from a particular hardware store. To be specific, I bought some pepper seeds. Greg wanted me to plant some hot Thai seeds, Thai peppers, and I couldn't find any little plants anywhere, but did find a package of seeds at the Home Depot. And unfortunately, I couldn't see up close in the package when I was shopping, and when I finally got them home, I noticed that they were pretty dated. They were packaged in 2019, which was obviously 5 years old and really a waste of time. I think I only looked at the package when I couldn't see much germination after a couple weeks, and I think I got one little seedling which eventually just died off. So the lesson learned is you can keep your seeds for 1 or 2 years, but beyond that I wouldn't recommend it. So I was sowing pretty heavily. These seeds were packaged in early 2024, so they should be fine. I did buy them early this year, but I went ahead and sowed pretty generously, probably about 4 to 5 seeds per cell, and I just wanted to use them up. And hopefully I can get these Canterbury Bells, which are a biennial, to germinate this year. And my plan for my zone is to put them in the ground in early spring, probably in February or March. And right behind me there is my southeast side of the garden where my hostas are, and I do have some peach digitalis planted there, which are also a biennial. They were actually supposed to flower in the first year, and in fact they did on this side, on the east side, but on the west side I planted some seedlings and they didn't flower. I hope this video will encourage you to also try some seed starting, whether it be over the next few months or early in the new year. It always gives me hope to plant some seeds and actually see them germinate over just a few short weeks. And it's just the most, satisfying thing to see little seeds grow into little seedlings. And then when they actually are ready to take outside in the early spring, it's just so satisfying to be able to say that you grew that beautiful flower or that beautiful plant or vegetable or lettuce, whatever it may be, that you grew that from seed. I often hear gardeners when they do their tours in their garden talk about how they grew this particular plant or flower from seed. There's just so much pride in doing that, as opposed to buying a plant that's already established and putting it in the ground. Of course, that's also satisfying, but I find seed starting and planting little seedlings in the ground to be just such a joy. So I encourage you to do the same, and hopefully you will plant something in your garden this spring that you started from seed. So after I put the vermiculite on the trays of seedlings, I cleaned up the greenhouse a little bit, put away the vermiculite, the potting mix, transferred the 6-pack trays into the tray with the other pots of chives. And as I was doing it, I realized there's not a lot of sunlight that's coming through over the next couple days, so I thought I'd transfer that tray onto my table. The tray of basil are on the top rack of the shelving unit, so that should get some sunlight, but at least having it here on the table, there's some hope of getting some direct sunlight. Over the next few days, pretty much check it on a daily basis, hopefully to see some germination. Everything's looking really good in the greenhouse. I did give it everything a little sprinkling of water. It looks pretty bright considering it rained all day. Just puttered a little bit. Notice that my little annual blue flowers there, my morning glory, were still blooming. And my little starts here of the purple heart is actually seeing some roots growing there in the water. And my ajuga that I had transplanted from the east side of the garden were actually doing well. I was just picking out all the little yellow leaves, anything that just needed to get deadheaded. I pulled them off. Just puttered for a few more moments in the greenhouse before going back inside. So it finally stopped raining after a couple days, and it was time to get back into the garden and to assess the cleanup that I needed to continue doing. I saw that nest in the crabapple tree. Didn't notice it all summer. So that pot with the snapdragons looks like it's ready to come out, and I can do my lasagna bulb planting in there. Basically in this bed, I'm going to now cut back my roses. Even though in this particular Tchaikovsky rose, I still have a couple buds, but the black spot is continuing to take over because of all the rain we've had. And this particular earth angel, which has been annoying us for quite a while because it's just grown beyond what it said it would, and I was just waiting for these roses here to finally bud out or bloom, and then I would cut it back. But this branch over here, cascading all the way to the pathway, needs to cut back today. And I took the cloches off my urns and noticed that the little mums were pretty much dried up and spent. I deadheaded the one over here, debating whether or not that even has a chance. Need to take out that annual that's in there, blew my mind, and my peonies in this bed. I will cut those back today. As you can see, the wind has cut a couple of the stalks down already. And Kiss Me Kate, always debating on whether or not to leave these climbing roses, because last year I left them and they weren't nearly as tall, but then in the spring there were a lot of dead canes which I cut back and it grew that tall. And then looking at my Macrophylla hydrangeas here, Let's Dance Skyview, I think they're going to make it. This one right in the middle though is looking really really weak as compared to the others. So it's really debatable whether or not these will make it. And as I mentioned before, if they don't make it this spring, then they need to come out, and I don't know whether I'll replace them with some of the other types of hydrangeas. So my roses are my priority today. There's another bud still coming, but I am going to cut back significantly these really tall ones and start to prepare the soil with some compost around the base. New Dawn is still pushing out blooms, but the rain has definitely stressed it out. I think I'm going to leave the canes that have continued to grow up this arbor and hope that next spring they will grow off the old canes off. And I wanted to show you this peach digitalis over there that was struggling. I believe next summer it should bloom, since the one on the east side did well and it bloomed. And my Princess Spireas are going red. And here are these stressful daylilies that I want to cut back and get rid of. And there's still a rose there blooming. And there's what the PG hydrangeas. I was trying to say that I might replace them in the front. And look at the lavender still blooming. But I leave all of these blooms on the little limes and bobo hydrangeas. I leave those until the spring. Even though they're quite brown, I leave them unless they get super heavy. These are the dahlias that were still blooming last time we took a look, so I'm going to pull those out. I'm curious whether or not there are tubers under there. Presumably there would be, since they're dahlias, but certainly not going to save them. And look at the peppers that I need to harvest. And the marigolds need to come out now. They definitely are done. I'm tired of looking at them. And those onions, they're still doing well. So here are the last two beds left in the cut flower garden. I'm going to cut back. These hollyhocks are looking a little bit sad. Greg tells me that pathway may have to, the one that he needs to spread the gravel, may need to wait till the spring. And I am so glad that we have evergreens back here. And look at this. This was tagged. It was a clearance Rose of Sharon. It was supposed to be a white one according to the tag. It was a clearance one at Lowe's at the end of the season, and it is not white. It is not the white chiffon. I think it is a pink chiffon or blue chiffon, if you guys know what that is. And my other hydrangeas, and of course my Roxanne, and this cage that keeps blowing off. I guess I didn't stake it down on my turtle head. Now these three Let's Dance Sky Views are doing much better. They like this location much better than at the South Garden. Okay, so hopefully you're not hearing that sound. Everyone is getting either their leaf blowing out there, or they are mowing the lawns. I don't know. So I've got my Fiskars pruners out, and I do own some of those Velcro pruners that Pretty Little Garden did a really great video about how to clean them, a really comprehensive way of how to take them apart and clean them. But mine are older, they're not that sharp anymore. I should probably just get them sharpened. So for now I'm just going to use these because they're new and they're sharp. So, fall pruning for roses. It's a good time to prune them when they've gone dormant. And I look up and down here, and this is my David Austin Emily Bronte rose. It never bloomed this year. Lots of new buds. Swelling. This is swelling right here, and so I can cut them back this fall, or I can also cut them back again in the spring. And because we do get heavy snow here, I don't want these branches to potentially blow over and stress the rose plant out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it back. It didn't bloom this year, so hopefully with cutting it back aggressively next spring it will bloom. So let me just do that. This one here, there's a main branch right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cut back this little guy here, and we'll put everything that I cut back in a bag to dispose of. Won't leave any debris down on the ground if I can help it. So I'm just going to cut right here, right above. Hopefully you can see it, this bud swelling here. Same with over here. Even though Emily Bronte didn't bloom this first season, I'm pretty confident, very confident that it will bloom next year. Some roses are just like that. Kiss Me Kate didn't bloom the first year. I'm going to get rid of all these little suckers down here, because all you really need are a few strong canes. And these little spindly ones here are just not necessary. It's a good idea when you're pruning your roses to try and wear a pair of leather gloves. These ones are just leather on the inside, but it helps at least when you're brushing against the thorns. There's a spindly one right here. It's got a black spot on the leaves, and I'm cutting it back. Anything that looks dead already, I'm cutting back. I think they were cut back from the previous season, or earlier in the season when it was sold to me. There's one in here that's dead. Cut it completely off. Close. Oh, here's what a dead looking branch looks like. It was down at the base. This is a spindly one as well. Anything that's weak, I'm cutting off. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to cut this one. So I have 7 strong canes that will do really well next spring. I'm going to open up my bag of compost. Forgot my knife. And then in the spring, you can just blend that back into the soil around it. And I will mulch again in the spring, since a lot of the mulch. And this is the kind of compost that I used when I built this no-dig bed, by the way. It was cardboard and 2 layers of this compost that I did. I did a layer in the fall, a thick layer in the fall, and another thick layer in the spring when I saw grass growing underneath the cardboard. So there you go. There it is. So I wanted to give you a close-up of a few of the roses. I've done most of them, maybe more than half. So here is the mound of compost that I did all around the base, nice and thick, to basically insulate the roots for the winter. And I've cut this one back. This is Queen of Sweden, and look at that, there's another bud. So I left the foliage around there, but cut back that one over here. I have about probably about 7 canes here too, but I did defoliate most of it because it's just a matter of time before they all get spent or black spotted with all this rain we're getting. There's another mound there, the other Queen of Sweden. This Easy Spirit, I've left some of this foliage. I haven't finished taking them off yet because they're still pretty healthy. But if there was any black spot, I removed the foliage. Cut back anything that was spindly, any branch that was facing inward, I cut back. Here's one, Princess Alexandra of Kent, that I really cut back in terms of foliage. But look at, there's a bloom. I can never focus in on it. There's a bud. Don't know if it'll be warm enough for it to open up, but there's another one. Look at that. So here's the first one I worked on that I showed the example of. I wasn't low enough to the ground so you couldn't see that, and I wasn't high enough where you saw where I cut back. But I left it pretty tall. It's about 3 feet tall. But at least I cut back all of the branches that could bend backwards. So this one here, Olivia Rose, Austin, lots of foliage still in the front. I'm gonna leave those for now, but I cut back the ones that were back there. White Diamond, it's a young one. These are all young, but smaller, there wasn't much to cut back. So I just wanted to show you how I mounted everything. So I'm going to carry on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 still to do in this row in my bed of roses. I have 13 here, I believe, 13 or 14. But anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in the garden and pruning my roses, and I hope you're all out there working on your fall cleanup as well. See you again on the next video. Bye-bye.